1 in 3 ChatGPT searches trigger an internet-connected search. What does that mean for your business?
Okay, so 1 in 3, actually this report is talking about how there's been a slight, not slight, down from 46%. But to me, 1 in 3 is quite high. So that tells you that people are using this as basically as a search engine to find information, to do research. They're not saying I think when a lot of things come out, like when the first ChatGPT came out, they're like, use silly use cases, and you saw all this stuff, and now I think we're seeing the true use case of doing deep research, finding recommendations, and that's where our interest lies. So that's why this caught my attention. So yes, down from 46%. We do know that some of the decrease is as the training data grows, they ingest more, as also their own cache resources. We were just talking about in one of our previous videos about how the cache resources are growing. So the thought is that as they crawl more and more of the web, they're storing more of that information and pulling from their own internal resources. So it doesn't mean that people are using it less. It might just mean that it's pulling a bit more from its own information internally.
What does that mean then to an internet-connected search? What is the difference between that and not doing that?
Yeah, so this would be if you were doing a search and you said, tell me about Nike. What is Nike? It probably isn't going to trigger the search. It's going to say Nike is a shoe company. It knows a lot of information about it. It will tell you who founded it. It could tell you, quite a bit of information, I imagine. Now, let's say you do, even in the same category, actually, you do a search for a smaller company. If it doesn't know a lot about that company, it will actually go and do a search. It's going to look at its website. It's going to check its social accounts to find out some information to come back to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, this really gets split between informational searches. The things that would pull from the training data would be informational, maybe strategies. If you're asking about something that it would have a lot of information around. So that could be something about I have seasonal allergies, what are some things that can help? It probably has a lot of that information, and it can pull from its own resources. It doesn't mean it won't do the search. Sometimes you'll get a prompt where sometimes it'll trigger the search and sometimes it won't. So no idea what's behind that. But anytime you do one where it needs up-to-date information, or if you're looking for a recommendation, I've found that most of the prompts we're doing, right, are around AI visibility for companies. So let's take a plastic surgeon, for example. If you're looking for who's the best plastic surgeon in Chicago, or plastic surgeon for surgery type in Chicago, it is going to trigger the web search currently. Because it's going to go and see who, not just what companies are in the market. It already has the understanding, but it wants to look at the latest reviews. I think anytime it makes a recommendation, it wants to be more certain of what it's the companies it's putting forward.
That makes sense, and the timely nature behind that as well makes sense, doesn't it? If all training data is on a lag, and a company was once great, but has had an influx of reviews in recent weeks, then it needs to know that. Otherwise, it's going to be making bad recommendations to its users.
Yeah, 100%. So that's very important. So I would say, So this was saying from late 2024. It was at 46% of the queries, now down to 34%. So I would assume a lot of that drop has been because it has more internal information. I wouldn't assume it's because people are using ChatGPT differently. Now, within this, they found a difference between word count in the prompts that triggered web search and the prompts that did not. So of the search trigger prompts, the average length was 4.7 words. And the average length of it's got two different dates. Initially, it was 4.7 words. This was in 2025. In 2026, January through February, same period, 8.7 words. So you're seeing, I think that's saying that as people get used to using ChatGPT, initially probably used it a little bit more like Google, We all were trained to think in keywords, I think everyone can think about when they go to Google the way they search. Now, ChatGPT, maybe when you're first using that, you use it the same. But now you're starting to like tell it your life story just so you can ask it something and it has all this context. So that nearly doubled from 4.7 to 8.7 words. Now, the average length of non-search prompts, so the ones that you're asking it something and it did not trigger the search results, 13.5 words.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's weird, isn't it?
It is. So quite a bit more. There's no more information on that. So it says shorter queries are more likely to trigger search.
Maybe that's because you're giving it so much context. Like maybe if I said, in World War II, what was the tank regiment, the X, Y, and Z in the like it 100% knows that. I've been extremely specific. It doesn't need to do an internet search. Perhaps that's the way.
Yeah, that could be it. But I think, yes, it's got to be something along those lines. Because if you gave it a long explanation of your health history and then asked for a medical recommendation, like a doctor, it's going to go trigger the web search. It doesn't care. It's not going to look and say, oh, well, it has this many words, so I'm not going to search the web. Okay, so there are a couple ways that search results are triggered. One is the user manually selects web searches. So I feel like that's not that common anymore. Like for the most part, when it first came out, you did that. Like you're like, okay, I wanted to search the web and you had to check that. Now I don't think most people do that because it does auto trigger anytime it needs to, right? Another one is when the user asks for sources. I think that's probably a little more common. I would assume that this is probably more like your casual users. I think heavy users, they know the source panels at the bottom. They know how to check the sources. So I would assume this is more your casual user who's doing some research and they want to know the sources are. Okay, then the model is uncertain. If it's uncertain, it's always going to go to search. It's not going to rely on its training data. And then if the question involves facts after the model's training cutoff. So each model has like a different training cutoff. So if you're using 5.5, it's different than 5.4. But anything that's after the model's cutoff. I would say from my own research, anytime you're asking for a recommendation, I cannot find prompts that do not have sources, which means it's gone out and searched the internet when I'm asking for a recommendation.
Okay, so ChatGPT, 1 in 3 searches is connecting to the internet. That means you've got 1 in 3 chance of being discovered out there in the wild, pre-training data. Obviously, a strategy which is going to maximize your AI visibility is to get in the training data and then also be crawlable, visible, interpretable by the AI bots for those live internet connected searches. Make sense?